Hello, folks. Welcome back to another edition of Spinner of Yarns, where we bring you stories read out loud for you to enjoy. If you have been following along, we're on to Blood of the Wolf, Matters of State, right here. You can find it on Amazon.com in Kindle edition and paperback. You can also find it on BarnesandNoble.com. If you like what you are hearing, please do subscribe, hit the notification bell down below so you will be updated every time I load another video onto YouTube. You can also support this channel by following any of the links in the descriptions that will lead you to my Etsy, Redbubble, eBay. That's how I support my daughter and support the writing. You can also find them in the channel bar up above. So, we are on to Chapter 2, Forced to Action. Over the next few weeks, U.S. officials spent countless hours debating over how to proceed. The ongoing war in the Middle East reignited like a wildfire now that the entire world was at war. Everyone seemed to be preparing for Armageddon. Discussions that were once tense were now held with almost murderous intent on both sides of the table. With no chance for a peaceful resolution, this battle was one that was sure to stain the world in blood. Michael had Arthur running the Shadow Wolves through intense training every day since war was declared. He wasn't sure what direction everything was going to go because of how chaotic the worldwide energy was at the moment, but he was sure that the death toll would be immense all around. All he could do was prepare his men for battle and make sure the people within his territory stayed well protected. The U.S. decided that to keep the peace amongst the citizens, they had to declare martial law, a move that Michael and Arthur both predicted would happen. A curfew was put in place from sundown to sunup, and anyone caught outside after curfew was immediately arrested and detained for questioning. Paranoia was running high at this point within the government and amongst the citizens. Everyone started wondering if the person standing next to them was in fact loyal to the U.S. or a spy seeking to destroy the country. The recent wars had put the U.S. at a deficit for soldiers, something they were going to need now that half the world wanted to destroy them. So in order to fill their ranks, they reinstated the draft and began rounding up recruits. This was something that the majority of the Shadow Wolves understood, but at the same time, they were against their loved ones joining the U.S. military, given their past experiences. So Michael gave the okay for them to reach out to their family and friends. The invitation was extended to either seek asylum with the Shadow Wolves or to undergo the test and become one. Michael was almost surprised by the overwhelming response of friends and family of Shadow Wolves wanting to take the test and become one as well. Nearly 70% wanted to join their ranks. The other 30% either felt they were too old or too scared of what the change would mean for them. It was a sentiment Michael couldn't fault them for. Being a member of the Shadow Wolves wasn't for everyone. Once the family and friends of the current Shadow Wolves had undergone the test and changed, their ranks had grown to 500,000 strong. A number that wasn't going to be easy to hide given the present state of affairs. The U.S. was sure to notice 500,000 draft dodgers, and since they couldn't go home without the chance of unwanted run-ins with the military tracking down their missing recruits, Michael felt it was time to expand. The new recruits still needed to be trained, and the current training grounds weren't going to accommodate that number. Michael had Skywolf pull up all the real estate surrounding the base. A lot of the businesses were nearing foreclosure due to the present economy, so Michael offered 5 of the warehouse owners closest to the base 1.5 times what they were worth for the owners to sell with no questions asked. They were all too happy to comply. They were losing most of their employees to the draft anyway, so they were on the verge of shutting down. The employees that were remaining were offered higher-paying jobs with Thundertech Industries. Now that the issue of space was dealt with, Michael put his wolf tech, Socrates, along with a team of Shadow Wolves from one of the tech divisions to work fortifying the warehouses for training and living quarters. He also committed them to building a series of underground tunnels to connect all the bases so they wouldn't have to travel above ground if they didn't need to. One of the warehouses was converted into a self-sustaining greenhouse, so they would have a nearly endless supply of food year-round. Michael made deals with a few of the local ranchers to the west of their main base for exclusive purchasing rights to their meat from cattle, pigs, and chickens. They agreed to sell to the Shadow Wolves in exchange for money and Thundertech innovations in farming and filtration technologies. They were all tired of the hardships the farming and ranching communities had been facing. All they wanted was for someone to take their needs seriously and allow them to live in peace, which was something Michael was more than happy to accommodate them with. wasn't long before the U.S. government found out about the Shadow Wolves' new batch of recruits and those seeking asylum within their ranks. The act was seen as a treasonous, and troops were sent to take them down. Skywolf alerted Michael and the other Shadow Wolf commanding officers of an approaching military convoy with orders to infiltrate and bring them down. Arthur looked over at Michael, who was seeming amused by the news. Michael just shrugged. I figured it wouldn't take long before 500,000 bodies showed up on satellite. Get the troops ready. Maybe if they see the exact number they're dealing with, they'll back off without a fight. Arthur nodded. You know they're eventually going to come looking for blood. I don't relish the idea of harming American soldiers any more than you do, but we may not have a choice if they push the issue any more than they already have. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but for now this is just a show of strength. Arthur turned to relay the message to the officers of the individual platoons. Everyone understood, even though the thought was in the backs of their minds, wondering how this all would go down and what the future would hold. All the Shadow Wolves suited up and waited for their orders. Michael and his Shadow Guard put on their armor and went out to greet the soldiers. As the convoy came down the highway, Michael and his Shadow Guards were standing in the middle of the road. The convoy came to a halt, and a large deployment of soldiers exited the transports with their rifles raised. The commanding officer stepped out and ordered Michael and his guards to lay down on the ground and surrender. Michael saw the ranking insignia on his lapel. I was hoping we could be more civilized about this, Major. The Major laughed. In case you haven't noticed, the world is at war, and your group are terrorists and traitors to the United States. So I'd say the time for civility is over. Now get on the ground before I order my men to kill you where you stand. I was really counting on you being a little more diplomatic. Michael gave the command over the helmet's radio, and 500,000 Shadow Wolves teleported into the open, through the shadows cast off of buildings, trees, and each other. The U.S. soldiers were surrounded. Michael stepped forward. Go back to your superiors, Major, and let them know that coming to my doorstep bringing violence is only going to end badly for you. I have no desire to hurt your men, but if you continue to push my hand, I will do what is necessary. You've made the wrong choice here today. You just signed your own death warrant. You really overestimate the power of your military, Major. The Major gave the order for his men to get back in the transports. They turned around and started to leave, but before they were even 2 blocks away, Skywolf let Michael know the 2 jets were inbound with orders to destroy the base. Michael snarled, then called Warwing on the radio. Meet me in the air. Seems someone needs to learn a lesson. Michael walked over to Arthur and put a hand on his shoulder. Be ready to move. I've got to go return something to someone. Arthur nodded as Michael lifted up into the air and took off in the direction of the jets. Warwing met Michael in the clouds as they waited for the jets to approach. They were going to ambush them before they could even get within firing range. They could see them off in the distance, and as they moved closer, Michael and Warwing moved into action. Michael put up his shield and flew directly at the jet on the right, while Warwing targeted the jet on the left. As the jet on the right opened fire, all the rounds bounced off Michael's shield. Michael held out his hands and fried all of the electrical systems in the jet and kinetically sealed the hatch so the pilot couldn't escape. Then he crumpled both of its wings with his telekinesis. As it started to plummet, he caught it in a force field and dragged it along with him. Warwing blew off the other jet's wings with a few railgun rounds. As that plan started to go down, the pilot ejected, but not before firing off 2 cruise missiles. Michael grabbed that jet in a force field as well, while Warwing went after the pilot. Michael let Soulfang know about the incoming missiles, so he teleported to the base with 2 other wolf priests and shielded it just before they impacted. Warwing snatched the other pilot out of the sky, as Michael flew up alongside him with the 2 jets. Follow me. We need to go have a discussion with someone. As they flew towards the convoy, Michael told Arthur to go on up ahead and let the Major know they needed to have another discussion. When they arrived, they could see Arthur had stopped the convoy, and he had all the troops face down on the ground, including the Major. Michael landed, setting both of the planes down in front of the convoy. Warwing flew by, flinging the pilot at the side of one of the trucks. He bounced off with a groan and cough as it knocked the wind out of him. Michael walked over to the Major. Get up. The Major smiled. I told you this would happen. With a flick of his wrist, Michael lifted the Major up off the ground and slammed him into the wheel well of the truck, bouncing his head off of it. The Major looked back at Michael in shock and instantly started to threaten him, but Michael waved his hand and removed his ability to speak. For this portion of the discussion, you just need to listen. We have never once attacked an innocent U.S. citizen, turned our guns on police or military personnel, nor have we ever threatened to do so. You have attacked us, called us terrorists, and even threatened to imprison or kill us, all while we help you clean up a mess you are either incapable of doing or too busy to do on your own. That's even considering that you give a fuck about the citizens of your own country, to begin with. I have tolerated you thus far, but that tolerance has reached an end. You run back and tell your superiors that any further attacks on the Shadow Wolves will be viewed as an act of war, and will be dealt with as such. The Major was practically shaking at this point from anger and fear. Michael tossed him to the side, then turned and walked over to Arthur. Escort them to the edge of downtown, then close off the roads. If any of them even attempts to raise a weapon against us, blow off a limb. I may not wish them dead, but they will learn not to cross us. All the troops climbed back into the transports. The Major glared at Michael as he stepped in as well. Michael walked up alongside the truck. Remember what I said, Major. Any more attacks, and the bloodshed will be on you and your superiors. The Major continued looking forward. As Michael gave the signal to let them leave, he noticed the pilot of one of the jets was still sealed in the cockpit. He started laughing as he waved his hand and unsealed the hatch. Don't forget your pilot. The pilot jumped out of the jet, ran to the closest truck, and climbed in. Shade slapped him on the ass as he ran past. See you soon, sweetie. The pilot almost tripped over his own feet, which made Shade and the Shadow Wolves around him all laugh. The pilot whimpered like he was about to get prison raped by a 7-foot werewolf. The convoy started moving, and Arthur followed them to the edge of downtown with a small detail of Shadow Wolves. Once the convoy was clear, they closed off the roads around the base, with tractor-trailers left behind in the warehouse buyout. Then they posted a detail of Shadow Wolves at each roadblock. Citizens were allowed through, but any military or police were encouraged to move on. Those that refused found the choice to be ill-advised once rifles were raised. One police car was even aided in turning around by 2 Shadow Wolves who picked up the vehicle and pointed it in the correct direction. Within days, the media was littered with reports calling the Shadow Wolves enemies of the United States and blaming them for the massacre on the Oregon coast. The military accused them of interfering with their efforts to stop the North Korean invasion and causing a great deal of military and civilian casualties in the process, even though the towns had been evacuated and no civilians remained. Michael just sat on the couch, watching the news reports, humored by the level of bullshit they were feeding to the public. Nothing he wasn't used to seeing on a daily basis, though. News choppers flew overhead, showing video of the roadblocks and Shadow Wolf troops patrolling the area. Reporters speculated as to the Shadow Wolves' next move and asked why they would do something like this when the U.S. was in the middle of World War III. Michael knew that the public was most likely against them after all the propaganda. He hoped that enough would see through it and decide for themselves. Nevertheless, he knew that there would be some tough choices that would have to be made in the coming weeks. By the next day, the U.S. military had mobilized for an assault on the Shadow Wolf base. The Army and the Air Force were tasked with destroying all Shadow Wolf resistance in the Northwest. Michael had scouts out patrolling the city, so as soon as they spotted the military moving across the Fremont Bridge, they reported back to base. Michael brought up the satellite feed and saw a large deployment of troop transports, and even a few tanks. Skywolf also alerted him to a squadron of jets that were being sent to the area for support. Michael smiled and shook his head. I didn't expect them to give up, but this is ridiculous. They have no chance of winning. Arthur nodded. They don't know that. And even if they did, I don't think it would matter. They get their orders from the suits. They're just pawns in one big chess game. Michael took a deep breath and then sighed. Well, it's time they learned a lesson. Tell Warwing to go after the jets. All available Shadow Wolves that aren't busy handling other issues around their bases can handle the military. No guns, though. Only blades and blunt weapons. Oh, and try not to kill anyone. We're not the enemy, and they need to learn that, even if we have to spank them till they get it. Arthur laughed. Yes, sir. While Arthur got the troops ready, Michael had Skywolf patch him through to the U.S. military's radio frequency while he was getting his armor on. He told Skywolf to record the conversation and send it to every news station along with a link to the satellite feed over the area. He also told Skywolf to prevent the government or military from hacking in and cutting the news footage. He figured there would be no lying to the people this time. If they didn't want them to know the truth, they'd have to cut the news feed from inside the station, and that would just make them look worse. Just thought I'd give you guys an opportunity to turn around. If you insist on doing this, it's not going to end well for you. This is Major Thompson. There will be no negotiation. The Shadow Wolves' reign of terror ends today. Michael laughed. Reign of terror? Oh, do you mean giving the public life-saving cures or getting drugs and crime off the streets? No more lying to the people, Major. Don't say I didn't warn you. By the time Michael met up with Arthur and the Shadow Wolves, they were already in the midst of the battle. Between their armor and their shadow teleportation ability, the U.S. soldiers couldn't get a clear shot off. The tanks had moved into position and started firing shells at the main base, but the structure itself was virtually impenetrable. Michael knew it couldn't withstand the bombardment forever, though, so he moved towards the tanks, followed by Shade and Soulfang. Michael jumped up on the lead tank, tossed the gunner out of the machine gun turret. Then he dug his claws into the hatch and ripped it off. One of the soldiers inside fired his pistol and hit Michael in the helmet. The round bounced off and Michael laughed as he reached in and tossed him out as well. He looked down in at the tank gunner and growled, which made him piss his pants and scream. Michael grabbed the tank turret and pulled it up out of its mount, then tossed it to the side. Then he just glared at the soldier inside as he jumped down off the tank. Shade took out his force hammer and hit the front of the tank with such a concussive force that it slid back a few feet, as well as disoriented the soldiers inside and caused them to bleed from their ears. Then he jumped up and slammed his hammer down on the tank barrel, bending it towards the ground. Soulfang called down 3 bolts of lightning towards the tank he was facing. Both tracks got blown off, and the tank turret exploded. Shade just looked over his shoulder at him. Show off. Soulfang laughed and shrugged his shoulders, then walked back towards the main battle. The U.S. soldiers were overwhelmed and overpowered, though, so the battle was ending rather quickly. The soldiers were broken and battered but alive. Even the firefight overhead was drawing to a close. Only one jet remained, and it looked like Warwing was toying with the pilot, showing off his armor's superior maneuverability. Once he got tired of the game, though, he blew off its left wing and watched the pilot eject. Michael thought everything was pretty much drawing to a close until he sensed some sort of danger, and a round struck him in the helmet, cracking it and almost making it through. He snarled and looked up towards the rooftops, where he saw a gleam from the scope of a sniper rifle. So Michael called Warwing on the radio. It's a sniper on a roof 2 blocks east. Do you mind bringing him to me? He cracked my helmet. My pleasure. Warwing zoomed in on the rooftops through the visor in his helmet until he spotted the sniper. Then swooped in and snatched him right off the roof. As he landed, Michael noticed the sniper was a woman. He walked over to her and picked her up telekinetically. He just glared at him, expecting him to hit her. Oh, she just glared at him, expecting him to hit her. Then her eyes were drawn to the crack in Michael's helmet. The nanotechs were already repairing the damage and pushing out the bullet. Once the bullet hit the ground, Michael disengaged the helmet. Nice shot. Nice armor. Why don't you give me another shot with the helmet off? Michael smiled and looked over at Arthur. Oh, she's sassy. Just the way I like 'em. The female soldier audibly swallowed. Michael and Arthur both laughed. Don't worry, honey. You're cute, but I'm married. Well, if you're going to kill me, then get it over with. Michael turned her around and looked at her ass. I might spank you for being such a naughty girl, but I'm not going to kill you. Michael could sense her sudden rush of excitement, but he put her down, which he could tell disappointed her. Then he ordered some of his Shadow Wolves to bring the Major to him. It was a different Major this time, but he looked just as arrogant as the last one. Michael walked up to him and glared at him, but the Major didn't turn away. What exactly did you hope to accomplish here? We have advanced weaponry, advanced armor, advanced tactics, and superior numbers. We have never once attacked you, and only seek to help the people. Last time, we healed your men. But since that only served to allow you to spit in our face once again, you can mend their broken bodies on your own. You were right about one thing, though, Major. The time for negotiation is over. Now take your men and leave. Do not come back. Michael ordered the Shadow Wolves to make sure every one of the U.S. soldiers left the area, even the ones that might be hiding, planning on an ambush when they think the time is right. Within hours, they had all left the area, and everything was secure again. Michael took his shadow guard aside once they were back at the base. I just wanted you all to be aware how the next few months are going to play out. This last attack made it very clear that no matter how much we try to help, to the government will always be the enemy. It, of course, shouldn't surprise me coming from a government that treats its own citizens like the enemy. What I'm here to do, or duty to this planet, and its people go far beyond their petty politics and arrogance. Therefore, it has come time for the Shadow Wolves and the Kingdom of Thunderguard to secede from the U.S. Arthur's eyes got wide. Solfang smiled like a giddy kid. Shade and Shadowblade just looked at each other in a little bit of shock. Eyeball's the only one that wasn't quite quiet about his response. "Oh, hell yeah! It's time to show them who they're fucking with." Michael laughed. "Pretty much what I was thinking. Any questions?" Arthur nodded. "How do you plan on going about this? They're not just going to lay down and let it happen." "I'm not expecting them to. But the time for negotiation is over, and I can't wait for them to come to their senses. So we'll just have to force the issue. If they want to contest the decision, they're welcome to try. I've already had our tech divisions working on border defenses for future fortifications, when the kingdom would have inevitably been reborn here on Earth. But I'm not going to sit by and watch while the world argues over who's got the bigger dick. Our medical division has developed tranquilizer darts that will knock their targets out for 24 hours. Once border defenses are in place, the second phase of the plan will begin. All U.S. military and government officials will be tranquilized and moved outside our borders. They'll wake up, disoriented, but no worse for wear. At that point, good luck getting back in." The Shadow Guard all took deep breaths and nodded. They could tell that the plan had been well thought out. One question remained on everyone's mind, though, so Arthur took it upon himself to ask. "So what do we do now?" Michael brought up a map of the U.S. on the main view screen and outlined Thunderguard's borders. It encompassed all of Washington, Idaho, Oregon, western Montana, northern California, and the northwestern corner of Nevada. Again, Arthur's eyes got wide. Holy shit! Michael laughed as he pulled up the schematics for the border defenses. There were designs for plasteel cyclone fencing, 30 feet high, that would be buried in the ground, and when it came time to deploy, it would fire out all at once. Once deployed, nanotechs would reinforce it and repair it if any of the links ever took any kind of damage. The border would be guarded at all times by an artificial intelligence monitored by Skywolf, with automated surface-to-air fusion implosion missiles and railguns. Anyone that tried to attack the border would quickly find out how stupid the choice was. Shade looked at all the designs and nodded, but he still seemed like he had some doubts, so Michael called him on it. "What's on your mind?" "What's to stop friendly fire or innocents from getting shot because they got too close to the border?" "Easy. Socrates and Skywolf deployed this AI together, with the ability to sense a target that is armed and one that is not. As for the Shadow Wolves that will be patrolling the border, this AI can also detect your genetic encoding, along with thousands of other species and beings. It knows its targets, almost as good as we know our targets. It may not have our sense of smell or other abilities that can pick an enemy out of a crowd, but it's damn close." Shade smiled. "Well, damn. I wish we would have had this kind of technology over the Middle East. A lot of my buddies wouldn't have lost their lives." Michael nodded. "Which is exactly why I was hoping the U.S. government was going to come to their senses. I'm happy to share our tech, but not with a country that's too power-hungry and pompous to see reason." Over the next 2 months, the Shadow Wolf tech divisions went to work burying the defenses along the border, mostly at night so they wouldn't be discovered. It was coming up on late fall when all the prep work had been completed. Everyone was a little on edge because the day of secession was quickly approaching. By the end of the next week, everything was in place. At 5 o'clock Monday evening, Michael broke in on all the news stations throughout the United States. "This is Lord Kerrigan of the Shadow Wolves. I'm interrupting your programming for a very important announcement. Due to the actions of the U.S. government and the governments of the world, we have been pushed to make a difficult decision. One we had hoped we wouldn't have to make. Since we could not find common ground and the U.S. government insisted on relentlessly attacking us, unprovoked, we have no other option but to secede from the United States. Thank you for your time, and I'm sorry it had to come to this." Once Michael's announcement ended, the Shadow Wolves made their move on every government office and military base within their borders. Within 7 hours, every government official, government agent, and military personnel had been tranquilized and were being loaded into transports. Family that wished to leave with them were allowed to board the transports without the need for tranquilizers. They only wanted to make this transition with as little bloodshed as possible, and since family members were much less likely to become violent, they let them remain conscious for the trip. However, they warned them that if they tried anything stupid, they'd be taken to snooze right alongside their loved ones. Over the next 15 hours, they made the trip to 10 miles outside of Shadow Wolf territory. It would still be about an hour before everyone woke up although they could tell that some of the military personnel were starting to stir. So they left them on the side of the highway and started the 10 miles hike back to the border. The fence and defenses had already been triggered, so when they approached Shadow Wolf territory, they saw an awesome sight. An automated defense system equipped with railguns and missiles. They saw the railguns begin to target them, along with a camera at the top of the fence, which gave them a thrill and a bit of a scare until they heard a female voice come from a speaker on the other side of the fence. Thunderwolves approaching. They let out a sigh of relief as the railguns powered down and some of the Shadow Wolves on the other side of the fence started giving them a hard time for getting spooked. Gates had been put up across the roadway where the breaks in the fence were. They were just as secure as the fence itself. All the Shadow Wolves that were part of that leg of the project had to do was hold the gates up while the nanotechs secured them in place. As the gates opened and the transport teams walked through, they stared in amazement, seeing the whole thing brought to life. Even knowing how far advanced Thunderwolf technology was, it was still astonishing to see up close. Their state of awe was quickly broken by several railguns firing off. They all spun around with rifles drawn, expecting to see the military coming their way, but instead they saw 3 drones dropping out of the sky. Reports of more drones being shot down at other points along the fence came over the radio. A couple hours later, the military transports that had been dropped off came rolling up to the gate. One of the generals that had been removed from Shadow Wolf territory jumped out and demanded to speak to someone in charge. One of the Shadow Wolf captains approached the gate. "Can I help you?" The general moved a little closer. "Do you realize how much trouble you're in, son? You have taken countless U.S. citizens hostage, and my government is not going to stand for this." The captain smiled. "We don't have any hostages. If they want to leave, they're welcome to. Why would they, though? We've got free health care. Hell, there's not a disease we haven't cured. And now, without your government's involvement, they're free to live happy, healthy lives. I wouldn't be surprised if more of your citizens didn't start trying to immigrate." That just made the general heated. "Either you open this gate now, or we'll ram it down." The captain looked up at the railguns targeting the transport. "I wouldn't suggest it, but if you'd like to try, be my guest." The general looked up at the guns and scowled, then turned back towards the truck. "You're going to regret this. My government does not negotiate with terrorists." The captain waved at him dismissively. "So I've heard. Y'all have a nice day now." The transports turned around and sped off down the road. However, that wasn't the end of it. Military personnel and news reporters showed up throughout the day, trying to investigate. The military was turned away, and those that tried to pose a threat were fired upon by the defense system. Most were warning shots, but any tanks and armored transports that approached trying to break through were shredded by the railguns. The Shadow Wolves just sat back and watched, shaking their heads. The defense system did the majority of the work. They were mainly there for looks and to talk with non-hostiles if need be, like the news reporters that were allowed to approach and ask questions. Michael had a rule about full disclosure. There was nothing he was trying to hide, and the candid honesty was something the reporters didn't expect. Of course, the government put their own spin on things so as not to confuse the people about the real threat. As the next morning rolled around, Michael actually called a press conference. News stations from all over showed up, either in person or remotely. Everyone was eager to get the scoop on the Shadow Wolves' agenda. As Michael approached the podium in his armor and robes, the whole crowd fell silent. He looked around the audience, in attendance, and as all the reporters clamored to be the first one to ask a question, Michael just raised a hand, requesting silence. "I'll be happy to answer all of your questions, but first I need to address a few things. The Northwest Territory that we occupy is now and will always be the new Kingdom of Thunderguard. Therefore, all citizens that wish to remain within this territory are now citizens of Thunderguard, and will adhere to the rules and regulations at all times. If you wish to leave, you're welcome to pack your things and make your way to the exit of your choosing. You're not hostages. You're here of your own free will and allowed to do as you choose, as well as come and go as you please, within limitations." Michael pointed at the first reporter and began going down the line. "What are those limitations?" "Follow the rules, such as don't commit crimes. Nothing ridiculous or outlandish, but don't steal, murder, rape, harm another without just cause. Discriminate against anyone, no matter your personal or religious beliefs. And don't do or sell drugs that are chemical in nature. If it doesn't come from the earth, it doesn't belong here. There are also minor limitations on religious practice. For instance, Believe what you want, but do not shove it down another person's throat, as if your doctrine is the only way. I'm here to tell you it is not. There never has and never will be only one God, just as there is not only one planet to star in this universe. To believe otherwise is childish and borders on insanity. But if you wish to be childish and insane, it's your right. What if people don't follow these rules? Then the punishment will fit the crime. You kill, you die. You steal, you lose a finger. You rape, well, I'll let you use your imagination on that one. Nevertheless, all these crimes will get you kicked out of our territory on top of whatever punishment you receive. Don't you think that's a bit harsh? No. Crime does not go unpunished, or else it corrupts from within. When no clear boundaries are set and you start to go easy on the people that wish to upset the balance of a good and just society, then you sow the seeds for your own destruction. What about the programs that the U.S. government provided, like health coverage, food benefits, disability, Social Security, housing, and welfare? Medical benefits are free. We have the most advanced medical technology in the world and a cure to every disease, man-made or nature-born. Best of all, you don't have to pay for it. Your lives are not commodities to us, so we don't treat you like stocks to be bought and sold. No matter if you are rich or poor, everyone deserves the same health coverage. There will be no more disability because there will be no more disabilities. Our medical technology can fix them. Social Security and welfare do not exist here because no one gets a free ride unless they are a child or elderly. If you are old enough to work, then you will. Laziness will no longer be rewarded. Children will be taken care of by their family, as will the elderly. Those that have no family will be taken care of by the most qualified professionals. Food is free, with an allotted amount per family member. Housing is based on your income level, but no one will be homeless because there is always work to be done and credits to be earned. Which brings me to the next topic, currency. The currency of Thunderguard is credits, which will be automatically deposited into your account after each day of work. They are yours to do with as you choose, and since you don't have to pay for food or medical coverage, it should leave you plenty for housing and other forms of enjoyment. What about gas for cars? No longer a thing. Thunderguard has fusion technology. All vehicles will be equipped with fusion engines. They have zero harmful emissions, so they're no threat to the environment. How about the police force? They're government employees, and since the U.S. government has been pushed out of this territory, how will you handle them? All police that wish to keep their jobs will become members of the Ch2 and go through the same testing and training. I refuse to allow the kind of corruption that has run rampant within the police force to continue. However, an incentive for these officers that choose to join is that their armor and weaponry will be upgraded, but their training will heavily emphasize non-lethal arrests. Since we're talking about government employees, I should also mention that the fire department will be getting a major upgrade as well. Their suits will be extremely lightweight and completely fireproof up to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, with helmets that completely filter the air they breathe. The suits will also augment their strength by 5 times their normal ability, to allow them to lift or break through almost any object that stands in the way of them saving a life. Will Thunderguard be entering the war? Not presently. This isn't our war, but we acknowledge that it is on our doorstep, so we're willing to make alliances with our neighbors to ensure that all our best interests are met. This is, of course, contingent on whether or not they are willing to recognize us as a sovereign nation and agree to peace. I will not agree to anything unless all the people of Thunderguard, Shadow Wolf and human alike, can live without fear of attack from the countries that border us. Michael looked around and could see that all the questions seemed to be answered. Everyone was nodding and silently writing in their pads, except for the television reporters wrapping up their station heads. They all seemed pretty satisfied with everything they had heard, but Michael could still sense the skepticism from the crowd. He knew it would take time for everyone to trust the things he said to be true. They were still too used to living under a government that told them countless lies while keeping the harmful truths hidden until it was too late. Michael didn't care how long it took, though. He was going to earn their trust. And that concludes Chapter 2. Concludes. If you guys like what you hear, remember, subscribe, hit the notification bell, like it, share it. Bring some other people to the table or the fire or wherever you listen. Yeah. So, tune in again very soon, once a week. I know it's been a week, but spring break. So I will see you guys soon.